Tanks have been a major focus of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and are seen as key for either Russia or Ukraine to take territory on the battlefield. In this video, we listed the top 10 best Russian tanks lost in Ukraine so far. But before we jump into the video, I would like to encourage you to leave a comment. It will increase my channel's visibility on YouTube. You can write whatever you want, a dot, slash, dash, or simply leave a tactical comment. Thanks in advance. Now, back to the video. Number 10 is the T-80BV. Produced from 1976, the T-80 series of tanks were a further development of the T-64. The strong point of the T-80 over the T-64 was its better armored hull. It's worth noting that the T-80 was the first mass-produced tank equipped with a gas turbine engine, which resulted in much better mobility. However, the problem with the original T-80 was that when it entered service, it was far less formidable than its designers planned it to be. When it entered service, the Americans were already testing the first prototypes of the M1 Abrams. Therefore, 2 years later, in 1978, the Russians decided to introduce an improved version, the T-80B. The T-80B had a number of advantages over the original T-80. First of all, the whole composite armor was changed to increase the protection of the vehicle. Additionally, the new 1A33 fire control system significantly increased the crew's situational awareness and fire accuracy. Interestingly, its main armament, installed until 1982, a 125mm 2A46-2 cannon, later replaced by the 2A46M1, could fire 9K 112 Cobra missiles. This missile had a range of up to 4,000 meters and could burn through about 700 millimeters of steel armor. In the realities of that time, this weapon could destroy every Western tank. In 1985, T-80B tanks were additionally equipped with Contact 1 explosive reactive armor. That's how the T-80BV was born. Thanks to the ERA blocks, the vehicle had significantly increased protection against heat warheads. At the time of making this video, 484 T-80BVs had been lost, including 83 captured in various shapes by the Ukrainians. Additionally, the Russians decided to modernize the T-80BV to the T-80BV Model 2022 standard. In this version, the armor was improved by equipping the vehicle with relict explosive reactive armor modules and a 1PN96 MTO2 thermal sight for the gunner. At the time of making this video, 16 T-80BV Model 2022s had been lost. Number 9 is the T-72BA. The T-72BA is an economic modernization of the T-72B Model 1985 and 1989 tanks. One of the main goals of the modernization was the introduction of an improved fire control system that automatically processed data from the wind sensor located above the rear part of the turret. Initially, between 1999 and 2000, the tanks were equipped with the 1A40-1 fire control system, and after the year 2000, it was replaced with the 1A40-1M and 1A40M2, which both featured modern digital ballistic computers. Additionally, even though the Russians didn't decide to replace the main gun, namely the 125mm 2A46M cannon, thanks to equipping the tank with the new 2E42-4 stabilization system, it was possible to improve fire accuracy, especially when firing on the move. Further changes include the installation of a new W84MS engine, which was developed for the first version of the T90, and reinforcing frontal floor plate and a suspended driver's seat, which increased the crew's survivability in the event of hitting a mine. Interestingly, the modernization didn't assume a unification of the basic armor and the replacement of explosive reactive armor blocks, which is why the T-72BA differs depending on the basic variant of the tank being converted. In total, from the late 1990s to 2005, approximately 750 T-72Bs were modernized to the BA standard, of which 300 to 350 were sold to Kazakhstan. At the time of making this video, 28 T-72BAs had been lost, including 16 captured in various shapes by the Ukrainians. Number 8 is the T-80U. The development of the T-80U under the leadership of Nikolai Popov began in the early 1980s. The first prototype using the T-80B chassis was built in 1983. Serial production began in December 1984 and ended in 1997. Unlike some other more economical models, the T-80U was, relatively speaking, a spare-no-expense project. Many elements have been modernized with particular emphasis placed on improving armor and increasing firepower. Compared to the T-80B, the T-80U was equipped with an improved gun, namely the 125mm 2A46M1 smoothbore cannon. Additionally, it could fire 9M119 reflex anti-tank guided missiles. The number of ammunition transported also increased from 38 to 45 rounds. Initially, the T-80U was powered by a GTD 1000 TF gas turbine engine, the power of which was increased from 1,000 to 1,100 horsepower, which by the late 1980s was replaced by a new GTD 1250 gas turbine engine, developing 1,250 horsepower. However, these engines were very expensive, which was a problem in the reality of the dawn of the Soviet Union. There were multiple attempts to solve the engine cost issue by installing a diesel engine. The result was the T-80UD, produced by the Melitaritive factory located in Kharkiv, Ukraine. The T-80U was also intended for export, but it enjoyed moderate interest. Cyprus bought 68 tanks in the U and 14 in the UK variant. In turn, 33 T-80Us and 2 T-80UKs were delivered to South Korea to cover a part of Russia's debt. However, the biggest export success was the sale of 315 T-80UDs to Pakistan. At the time of making this video, 96 T-80Us had been lost, including 46 captured in various shapes by the Ukrainians. Interestingly, the Russians also lost in Ukraine the only prototype of T-80 in the UM-2 version, which was equipped with the DROS-2 active protection system. Number 7 is the T-80UK. The T-80UK is a command variant of the T-80U. In general, it's similar to the T-80U, but has a number of additional features and improvements, like the TNA-4 navigation system or the Agava-2 thermal sight, which has longer detection and a better recognition range in limited visibility conditions. The T-80UK was also equipped with an auxiliary power unit, or the Stora-1 electro-optical jamming system, known from the T-90 and the T-90A. At the time of making this video, 2 T-80UKs had been lost, including one captured by the Ukrainians. Number 6 is the T-72B3. Introduced into service on October 27, 1984, the T-72B at the time of its introduction was the most advanced T-72 version which was put into mass production. The strong point of this vehicle was the armor protection of the front parts of the turret, which was superior to the then variants of the T-64 and similar to the best at that time variants of the T-80. The T-72B3 is the result of an economic modernization of a long line of T-72B tanks. It included, among other things, improving optoelectronics and an installation of a more accurate gun. On top of that, the tank was equipped with a relatively modern fire control system. This was a great improvement over older versions of the T-72, in which the gunner had to guess how far in advance to aim at a moving target in order to hit it. The result is a vehicle that offers great firepower for relatively little money, but at the expense of outdated armor. Therefore, due to the high cost of purchasing new T-90As at the end of 2012, it was decided that the T-72B3 would become the main tank of the armed forces of the Russian Federation until the new generation vehicles developed within the Armata family will be produced in significant numbers. At the time of making this video, 326 T-72B3s have been lost, including 81 captured in various shapes by the Ukrainians. Interestingly, they also lost 33 of a less advanced version of this tank, namely the T-72B3 model 2022. In this variant, the Russians were forced to remove the Sosna U gunner sight, equipped with an integrated French thermal imaging camera, and replace it with the less advanced Russian-made 1PN-96 MTO2. Number 5 is the T-80 UE-1. The T-80 UE-1 was accepted into service in 2005. These tanks were created by combining the turrets of the T-80UD, which were withdrawn from service in Russia in 1995, and the hulls of the T-80BV tanks, upgraded to the T-80U standard. The reason why the Russians went into so much trouble were problems with maintenance of the produced only in Ukraine 1,000 horsepower diesel engines used in the T-80UD tanks. Instead, the T-80 UE-1 is powered by a gas turbine engine developing 1,250 horsepower. In addition, it was equipped with a modernized 1A45-1 fire control system and applies a sight with an integrated French-made second-generation thermal imaging camera for the gunner. This allows to observe the target from a distance of several kilometers, both during day and nighttime. However, the problem with this tank, as well as many other Russian vehicles, with only a few exceptions, is the lack of a fully stabilized independent thermal viewer for the commander. Instead, the commander of the T-80 UE-1 tank has at his disposal the PNK-4S sight, which gives him a several times worse view range. Despite the commander having an overview of what the gunner sees in his sight, he cannot conduct effective observation separately, which makes spotting a possible threat very difficult. Needless to say, in 2005, in Western tanks, having a commander's independent thermal viewer was a standard. On the plus side, compared to the T-72 or many older variants of the T-80, where the machine gun installed on the commander's hatch can only be operated when the commander opens the hatch and exposes himself to a possible threat, in the T-80 UE-1, because of its uses, the T-80 UD's turret, the machine gun is installed in the commander's observation cupola and can be remotely controlled from inside the tank. Additional changes compared to the older variants of the T-80 include a modified autoloader and the replacement of the main armament from the 125mm 2A46M1 smoothbore gun with the newer 2A46M4. This gun can fire the latest Russian anti-tank munition, as well as the 9M119M anti-tank guided missiles with a range of 5 kilometers and penetration of about 900 millimeters of rolled homogeneous armor. At the time of making this video, 7 T-80 UE-1s had been lost, including 4 captured in various shapes by the Ukrainians. Number 4 is the T-90A. The first T-90 tanks in the original variant entered service with the Russian Armed Forces in 1992. It was based on the T-72B model 1989. It was equipped with the Stora-1 electro-optical jamming system and a modified fire control system from the T-80U, namely the 1A45T. Its next variant, the T-90A, was accepted into service in 2005. The modernization included, among others, equipping the tank with new tracks, a 160 horsepower more powerful engine, a new welded turret providing much better protection, and since 2006, a new ESA gunner sight equipped with an integrated French thermal imaging camera. However, the armor of the T-90 and T-90A is not flawless, as the Contact 5 ERA blocks are mounted in a way that doesn't completely cover the entire front of the vehicle. In addition, behind the Stora-1 dazzles, which we'll discuss in a moment, there are no reactive armor blocks at all. The Stora-1 electro-optical jamming system, which dazzlers are the main feature of the first 2 variants of the T-90 tank, is designed to disrupt the enemy's laser rangefinders, anti-tank guided missiles, and laser designators. However, currently this system is not effective against newer generations of this type of weapon, such as Spike, Javelin, or Brimstone. Interestingly, in the video published in 2016, the T-90 equipped with the Stora-1 jamming system was able to withstand an attack carried out with the help of the American BGM-71 ETO-2A anti-tank guided missile. However, in Ukraine, these tanks are less fortunate, as the Russians have already lost 37 T-90As, including 11 captured in various shapes by the Ukrainians, one of which ended up in the United States for evaluation. Interestingly, they also lost 6 T-90S tanks, which are the export variant and are not officially in Russian service. The T-90S is used by, among others, India and Iraq. The likely scenario is that Russia has bought or simply appropriated several of them while they were being refurbished in Russia. Number 3 is the T-72B3M. The T-72B3M is a modernized variant of the T-72B3. Improvements include the replacement of the main armament from the 125mm 2A46M2 smoothbore gun to the 2A46M5 of the same caliber. This gun can fire, among others, the latest Russian armor-piercing rounds with a depleted uranium penetrator, or the 9M119M anti-tank guided missiles, which have a maximum range of 5,000 meters. Mobility was improved by equipping the vehicle with a new 1,130 horsepower W92S2F engine instead of the 1,000 horsepower W92S2. However, despite this change, the reverse speed is still around 4 kilometers per hour. For comparison, the Leopard 2A4 can move backward at just over 30 kilometers per hour. The armor was improved by equipping the vehicle with cage armor and huge ERA modules protecting the rear and sides of the turret, as well as the engine compartment. In addition, the tank has been equipped with a total of 24 relict explosive reactive armor modules and rubber skirts protecting the sides of the vehicle. At the time of making this video, 258 T-72B3Ms had been lost, including 104 captured in various shapes by the Ukrainians. Number 2 is the T-80BVM. The T-80BVM is an upgraded version of the T-80BV. It was first publicly revealed in 2017. Compared to the T-80BV, it has improved armor protection thanks to a new relict explosive reactive armor kit. It retains a 125mm smoothbore gun. However, it uses a 2A46M4 variant, which has a longer range and is 15 to 20% more accurate than the 2A46M1 gun of the T-80BV. The effective range of fire with APF-SDS round is 3,000 meters during the day and 2,600 meters at night. The T-80BVM is compatible with newly developed Svinets 1 and Svinets 2 APF-SDS rounds with tungsten and depleted uranium penetrators. The tank can also launch 9M119M anti-tank guided missiles in the same manner as ordinary munitions. These missiles have a range of 5 kilometers and can also engage low-flying helicopters. These missiles extend the effective range of the 125mm gun, which lacks accuracy at longer ranges. Similarly to the T-72B3M, the armor has been improved by equipping the vehicle with cage armor and huge ERA modules protecting the rear and sides of the turret as well as the engine compartment. In addition, a total of 24 relict ERA modules and rubber skirts were installed to protect the sides of the vehicle. Interestingly, due to the sanctions, the Russians started the production of a less advanced version of this tank, namely the T-80BVM model 2022. Despite improving the armor by installing more ERA blocks, they were forced to remove the Sosna U gunner sight equipped with an integrated French thermal imaging camera. It was replaced with the Russian-made 1PN96MT02 thermal sight. Interestingly, based on combat experience in Ukraine, in October 2023, the Russian Armed Forces unveiled another modification of the T-80BVM, namely the T-80BVM Model 2023. It features reinforced wire cage armor on the top and rear parts of the turret and hull, as well as a Volinor's anti-drone electronic jamming system intended to increase the vehicle's resilience against Ukrainian kamikaze drones. Also, due to undisclosed transmission modifications, the reverse speed has been increased from 11 to around 20 kilometers per hour. At the time of making this video, 105 T-80 BVMs had been lost, including 33 captured in various shapes by the Ukrainians. Additionally, they lost 9 T-80 BVM Model 2022. Number 1 is the T-90M. The first T-90Ms were delivered in the spring of 2020, and they are currently the latest version of the T-90 in service with the Russian Armed Forces. The T-90M is created both by rebuilding older versions and by newly built machines. The scope of modernization aims at increasing firepower, improving armor, and mobility. The main armament is a 125mm 2A46 M5 smoothbore gun, which allows for usage of a newly developed Svinets 1 and Svinets 2 APFSDS rounds with tungsten and depleted uranium penetrators, as well as 9M119M anti-tank guided missiles. But the biggest advantage of the T-90M over other tanks used by Russia is that, unlike in previous designs, with one small exception that I will mention in a moment, the commander has his own independent thermal viewer called PKPAN Sokolny Głos at his disposal. This solution has been a standard for Western tanks for a very long time, but in Russia, it's only a standard for the T-90M and the T-14. A small exception, which I mentioned a moment ago, is the usage in Ukraine of a few T-72B3 Model 2014, of which 3 had been lost, including 1 captured by the Ukrainians. They were previously seen only during the famous tank biathlon competition held in Russia. At the time of making this video, 52 T-90Ms had been lost, including 3 captured in various shapes by the Ukrainians. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. See you next time.